but this will be the step-by-step deep dive on how you create a team, how you create a business, and how you get them working together in alignment to find a level of cooperation that makes that next level possible. Welcome back to Increase. I'm Blake Anderson. It's another episode. Going to continue on the organizational leadership framework. This is step 7 over the past 7 weeks. We have been digging into the organizational leadership framework. Everything you need to be a leader of an organization, to start a company, to lead a team of people. There's lots being taught out there about leadership, how to lead people one-on-one, what are the soft skills, and those are all important and encapsulated in this framework. But this will be the step-by-step deep dive on how you create a team, how you create a business, and how you get them working together in alignment to find a level of cooperation that makes that next level possible. So we can't do too much of a review today because we have so much to cover in this episode, because the 7th and final step of the organizational leadership framework is progress. And most of the time, leaders think about projects and they're focused on the progress, but I'm going to cover some things that I think you may have never been taught. And these are some of the things that are going to keep your team out of the weeds, on the path, marching down the field towards success. This is going to be some inside baseball, some techniques learned over years of leading teams, and some things that I learned from mentors of mine. So really the basis of the entire organizational leadership framework comes from a verse in the Bible, Isaiah 57, verse 14, and that verse says, "And it will be said, build up, prepare the road, remove the obstacles out of the way of my people." Now, a mentor of mine years ago taught me this verse, and he said he believed that it was the best Bible verse about leadership. And I thought that was a really bold statement, and I probably wasn't really willing to bite when he said it, but as he taught me this verse and it unfolded, I agreed. And so this Bible verse is so much more than meets the eye, and we're really dealing with the last statement of the Bible verse, which says, "Remove the obstacles out of the way of my people." And that is when we're talking about progress, because progress is about achieving things. You've laid out a plan, you've assembled a team, you have a process, you want to start making progress, but the leader's responsibility for the progress is that you get there. And a leader has to know how to look for the obstacles that get in the way of the people on the team who are making progress. And so I'm going to cover 3 things, and there's some particular steps and tips that I'm going to give you, which each 3 of these, about how to monitor and how to foster and steer progress for your team. So step number 1, as a leader, when you're thinking about progress, what you have to embrace is that you need to expect challenges. Not everything will be smooth sailing. No matter how far you go, you're going to run into an obstacle. You're going to hit a roadblock. You're going to run into red lights, and you might need to change course. And so you can't go into any project or any company expecting everything to go well, right? You have to expect that challenges are going to come. But just because a challenge presents itself doesn't mean you have to accept it. Doesn't mean that it has to stop you. Doesn't mean it even really has to slow you down. If you are a sophisticated enough leader and an engaged enough leader, challenges the team faces are not setbacks but setups. and you're able to keep your team moving and growing through them. And what you've got to know about the challenges that you face is the unexpected challenges you face can be small and they can be large, but it will all come down to how well you've done the first 6 steps. You see, if you'll take the time to implement the first 6 steps, not just in your leadership, but also in your team and company at large, when you hit a challenge, you will have equipped your team, equipped everyone to be able to handle a challenge and to keep going right through it. But if you neglect your responsibility of a leader to align the team and equip the team to make progress, you can hit the smallest bump in the road and come right out of your vehicle and reach a complete standstill. So expect that challenges are going to come, but don't accept them. Okay, first thing that you have to understand, and knowing that they're coming puts an impetus and importance on doing all of the steps of the process. Second thing you've got to know about progress is that as the leader, you need to take responsibility for the outcome. You heard me say more last week. John Maxwell says that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less, and I don't disagree, but what I add to it is that a leader has to take responsibility. So a leader is anytime that you have the ability to influence someone, you are in a place to lead that person. And so a leader is someone that influences others, but a leader is also someone willing to take responsibility. And so if you're going to be an organizational leader, you've got to be willing to take responsibility for the outcome, right? Now, many people get excited to get a new title, to get a promotion, to want to be called the leader of a team or the leader of the business. But what I found, unfortunately, is few people are willing to take responsibility for the outcome, especially when it doesn't go according to plan. You see, everybody wants to be the decision maker. Everybody wants people to do what they say. But not everybody is willing to stand up and take responsibility when the decision that's made doesn't go well. Well, that's your job as a leader. If you are going to be an organizational leader, you've got to take responsibility for the outcome. Remember that we've said a leader's success is in the hands of the team, and the team's success is the leader's responsibility. You see, you as a leader, the higher you go up the pyramid, the higher you climb the corporate ladder, the more authority you might have, but the more vulnerable you are, because as you grow in your influence, in your leadership, in your title, and in your place in the organization, much of the work that you are responsible for will be done by other people. You'll have to trust that they will do the right thing. And the only way that more will get done is you're going to have to allow them to do it. So you're in a vulnerable place as a leader, because whether you're successful or not will be whether your team shows up and whether they do a good job. So you need that team. You need them equipped and you need them doing well. But the Bible says, to whom much is given, much is required. And so you've got to understand that as much responsibility and authority is given to you, much is required. And so the second half of the statement says that the team's success is the leader's responsibility. You see, ultimately, whether your team wins or loses, succeeds or fails, will be your responsibility. Whether the people on your team get their promotion, whether they get a raise, might be based on a decision that you make. It may be completely out of their hands. And so it is a large responsibility to call yourself a leader. The Bible says in James that you shouldn't want to be a teacher, want to be called or to be a teacher, because you'll be held to a higher standard. And the same as leader. We want people to listen to us. We want everyone to do what we say when we make the decision. But we've got to be willing to stand by the outcome, to stand by the results, and take responsibility. And then finally, in order to see a team have progress, in order to stick with a team as they achieve results, a leader is going to have to stay engaged. And this is when we're going to spend most of our time this episode, is talking about how to stay engaged, because there are some things in here that I think a lot of leaders miss. There's some tips, tricks, some inside baseball to leading teams that I've gathered along the way that I think will really empower you. And so, when you stay engaged, a leader's got to know when to get involved, and a leader's got to know when to give space. Right? There's a fine line between micromanagement and steering someone in the right direction. There's also a fine line between empowering someone to make decisions and abdicating responsibility. You follow me? You see, and the best leaders are tactful leaders who stay engaged, and they know how to allow people the space they need while giving them the support they need as well. Right? They know how to give the people the autonomy that they want while also providing them the support that they need. So step number one is when you are staying engaged as a leader, okay? If you've been with me very long, if you know me personally, I'm the guy that likes to state the obvious, because I think a lot of times the obvious things aren't said. We assume the obvious, and so we don't do them. We end up spending our time getting really good at nuanced things and forgetting to put a deeper foundation into the fundamentals. And so the first thing that you have to know as a leader, if you want to steward progress, if you want to steer your team to greater places, when you stay engaged, you got to listen. You got to keep an ear open. You can't be the one doing all the talking in every meeting you're in. You might be the CEO of your company. You might be the person who's made all the plans. But the leader has also got to be the person that's got their ears open, who's listening to the wisdom, the knowledge, the experience of the people on their team, who's able to hear when someone needs help, who's able to hear when someone's ready for greater responsibility, who's able to hear when maybe a process needs to be improved, or who's able to hear when maybe there's someone on their team who's not pulling their weight. A leader has got to first be a great listener, okay? The second thing that you need to do as a leader is you've got to know your team, and that's part of listening. You got to take the time to know the people that you are leading, right? What are their strengths? What are their motivations? What do they like to do, right? The old saying goes that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? You've got to take the time to care for the people that you are leading, and you've got to know them. You've got to know when they're having a bad day. You've got to know when performance is suffering because they're not equipped for the challenge, or performance is suffering because there's something going wrong in their personal life. You've got to know them enough to know that when something isn't clicking in a team, that maybe there's a couple of team members who aren't working well together. Right? You've got to know them well enough to know that maybe you've asked someone to do something that's outside of their skill set, or maybe you've promoted someone into a place that they're not ready for. You've also got to be able to know when someone's starting to get to back off or be disengaged with the process, and they're starting to check out. Leaders have to stay engaged. They've got to listen, and they've got to know their team. The next thing is the leader's got to keep pulse on the progress. Many of the things that are going to be done in your name that you're responsible for will be done out of your sight. But a leader's got to keep a pulse on the progress. You can't just simply delegate everything to talented people, walk away, and assume they never need you again. Even if you have extremely talented people on the team who are able to work independently without you, if you're responsible for that project, for that company, you've got to keep a pulse on the progress. You've got to know how they're doing. One of the most important things that you can do as a leader, hear me out, this is really the crux of this whole step of progress, is a leader's got to be able to see when a team gets stuck. A leader's got to be able to identify the things that are slowing the team down. A leader has got to see an obstacle coming before the team gets to it. It looks like this a lot of times. You're starting to have success. Things are going really well. You're starting to get new opportunities come to your team or come to your company. A leader's got to be able to see, do we have everything in place to grow to this next level? Will we really even be able to handle the growth that we're going to step into? This opportunity that's been given to us is amazing, but can we handle it? You see, oftentimes it's the success that crushes a team, not the failure. It's stepping into something new that you don't realize you're not ready for. And a leader's got to be out in front thinking about that. You've got to have the foresight and the vision to be able to recognize the challenges before they come. So I'm in the building business, in the development business. A lot of what we do, building houses, building buildings, we are relying on a labor force and their ability to meet schedule and meet deadlines. Just because I've got a subcontractor who's got a good price that works in my budget doesn't mean that they can fill it when I give them 10 houses at a time. And the same person that does a great job on a budget in 1 to 2 houses may not handle the large apartment building. But as a leader, it's my job to see those things coming. I've got to be able to see this small person that we love is always lagging behind, and they've never brought on anyone new. Or this person seems to be super entrepreneurial. If I can give them a little bit more heads up notice on the growth that we're expecting, maybe they can bring on some more manpower. See, I've got to keep a pulse on progress to know what's slowing my team down. Is our relationships not working out? Is there a software problem? Is some of the process that we've been working on just not quite clicking yet? So you can't just leave the results up to the people on the team. I know you're paying them to do it. I understand that they have a contract to complete with you. But the leader has to understand it's your job. You have to take responsibility for the outcome. And if you want your team to be successful, then you've got to keep them in the clear. You've got to keep them on the road. You've got to keep the obstacles out of their way. And so a lot of my day, a lot of my time as a leader is looking for those obstacles. And when I see it coming or I see someone get slowed up, then I've got to get actively involved to try to get them free and clear again. So we'll get to more of that in just a minute. The next part about staying engaged, I keep pulse on the progress. I know how things are going. I need to empower the chain of command, right? I need to empower the authority and autonomy of the people on the team. I need to give them what they need to be able to do more without me. Do they need more training, or they just need permission to make decisions on their own? Is there a certain dollar amount that they have authority to spend? If something comes up over budget, do they have to stop everything and wait for my approval? Or is there a certain dollar amount that no matter what, they can say yes to? Right? What decisions do they have to stop and call me for? And what decisions can I just trust their training and their preparedness, right? So I've got to empower them and empower their autonomy and agency. I will get so much more done when I train leaders rather than when I micromanage followers. And that really speaks to the other steps of the process, right? As a leader, it's so much easier to empower the team, empower the chain of command with authority if I've taken the time to make sure we have alignment in all these other areas. Because I know that if a leader on my team, if we have a lot of the same goals, if we've agreed on the same principles, if there's clarity about who's responsible for what, if we have a process, if the right people are on the bus, and we have a game plan that we are using, then the leaders are empowered. The people on my team, if we have alignment there, they don't need me for near as much. They're ready to make good decisions without me. Okay? And then the final thing that a leader has to do, along with keeping the pulse on the progress, is a leader's got to offer help. Okay? A leader's got to offer help. There's a lot of leaders who are being too distant, staying out of problems, because they think, well, that's why this person is hired. I don't want to deal with this problem because I'm paying them to deal with this problem. That might be true, but if you're going to take responsibility for the outcome, then there's sometimes that you got to get involved. You've got to be able to get things unstuck so that they can get moving again, right? And oftentimes, leaders, it's going to look like this. You might have a particular issue that you're going to help them with, but your main job as a leader is you're going to be working on procedural and structural things, okay? Sometimes relationships, but most of the time, you're going to be working on procedures and structural things. That's going to be primarily what you're going to spend your time on. And sometimes you're going to be helping with higher level conversations with personnel and with other team members. Progress is important. That's why we start our companies. That's why we form our teams. That's why we start the next project. We're excited about accomplishing things. We're excited about getting things done. Progress will not happen on its own. Progress happens because a leader takes responsibility for the outcome. So I want you to take responsibility for the outcome. I want you to be confident in your ability. I want you to be confident to sign on the dotted line and says, yes, I will stand behind this project. I will lead the team. And if you'll take the time to implement all 7 steps, no matter if you're building a company or forming a team, then it'll be easy to say, yes, sign me up. Yes, you can hold me accountable for the results. Because I know that progress is my responsibility and it won't come without a challenge. But I'm able and willing to stay engaged to see this team accomplish something greater than they could by themselves. So that's the final step of the organizational leadership framework. I hope you go back and listen to all of them. It's really a masterclass on leadership. I'm going to spend the next couple of weeks kind of giving some bonus material, some things that weren't directly covered in this framework, but some concepts that empower your ability to implement this framework. So I hope you'll continue to join me. Whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, watching over here on YouTube, we'll see you next episode of Increase.